that covers almost every newspaper in every suburb of Australia. The New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, HarperCollins, publishers, the list goes on and on. What this means is that when you see a movie, watch a television program, pick up a magazine, newspaper or book anywhere in the world, there is a very good chance that you are consuming something owned by Rupert Murdoch. No wonder politicians rushed to court him, and the Sun newspaper believed that it won the 1997 general election with a landslide in the Labour Party. This convergence of ownership across media and communications platforms is very worrying indeed, and the scale of ownership separates Murdoch from the so-called British press barons of the 19th and early 20th century. Now, when I've been reading about the current protests in Taiwan against the monopoly of the media, I've been struck by the ease with which the defenders of this monopoly resort to the same tired old argument that many in their position use when challenged about ownership. If you don't like what you say, if you don't like what we say, change the channel, buy another newspaper, turn off your TV. But if we take the Murdoch empire as an example, it becomes more and more difficult to find another channel or buy another newspaper that is not owned by the same organization and therefore does not reflect the political and economic agenda of that organization and the man who owns it. Media monopolies undermine the idea of a free media market, free entry to that market, competition, and above all, access to a diversity of views, information, and opinion that is the lifeblood of modern democratic societies. Thank you.
If you have any question, hold it. Later on during the Q&A session, you will have time to ask Dr. Ronsley. Then, now I would like to invite Mrs. Ronsley, Mingye Ronsley, to the post.
Thank you very much. My talk today really is trying to bring everybody up to date about what's happening in Taiwan and what this campaign is about, as far as I understand. They are actually 5 demands made by different campaign groups under the slogan of anti-media monopoly in Taiwan. Although these demands are interrelated, they address different issues. For example, recently when Noam Chomsky supported the anti-media monopoly campaign in Taiwan, he didn't realize that the campaign board he raised up includes a slogan, anti-hidden Chinese interference. Therefore, it is important for us to understand what these different demands are, how do they come under the same campaign umbrella, and what is the implication for the media in Taiwan. So what are these 5 demands? First, anti-media monopoly. Second, anti-hidden Chinese interference, or shorthand, China factor. It is less to do with the direct Chinese government interference, but actually is more referring to the Taiwanese businessmen having business interest in mainland China. Third demand is to safeguard press freedom. And more recently, 2 additional demands are made to include strengthen public service broadcasting, and also finally to strengthen labor union within the media industry. So how did these 5 demands all come under the same umbrella, and what's the time scale? Roughly we can trace back to 2008 when Wang Holdings, which is a food manufacturing in Taiwan, they purchased China Times Media Group, including one of the major newspapers in Taiwan, plus several television stations and cable distribution system. Wang Group belongs to Mr. Cai Yanming, who has major business interest in mainland China. Since he takes over China Times Media Group, he has exercised his personal power to interfere with editorial independence within all the media that he now owns. For example, he instructed specific political lines that editors and journalists must take. He sacked editor-in-chief of China Times, Xia Zhen, because of the wording of a specific headline about Chen Yinling of mainland China. He also declared that he wished for a swift unification with mainland China, etc. So Mr. Tsai's behavior has made him a highly controversial figure in Taiwan. The demand of anti-China factor in journalism in Taiwan was formulated because Tsai Ing-wen's blatant disregard of press freedom worries the general public. In 2001, Next magazine came to Taiwan. 2 years later, in 2003, Apple Daily arrived. Both are owned by Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai. These two print media, they operate under the principle of sensationalism, but they also conduct vigorous investigative journalism and insist on political independence. The combination of these factors made them the most popular news magazine and daily newspapers in Taiwan. Jimmy Lai launched Next TV in 2009, followed the same principles as Apple Daily and Next magazine. And because of the sensationalism of this television station, Taiwan's National Communication Council decided not to allow for this TV station to become a cable channel. So up to now, it still only operates on the internet. So reportedly, Next TV lost around 100 million NT dollars every month. So right up to April 2012, rumors had it that Jimmy Lai wanted to sell Next TV. Once the news was out, a lot of complicated business discussions began to take place, and it ended up with Jimmy Lai agreed to sell actually his more profitable media outlet, which is Apple Daily and also Next magazine. Tsai Ing-wen was one of the first to express interest, but was rejected by Jimmy Lai. Later on, when Jimmy Lai accepted the offer made by Zhongxin Consortium and also Formosa Plastic Corporation, Tsai Ing-wen then actually sneaked back into the deal by becoming part of this consortium deal and became one of the investors who are now going to buy Apple Daily and Next magazine. So the anti-media monopoly campaign generates momentum because if this business deal was signed, Tsai Ing-wen would become the most powerful individual in the media industry in Taiwan, owning the most popular newspaper in Taiwan, Apple Daily, a not so popular but still pretty significant newspaper, China Times, the most popular news magazines, Next magazine, as well as his several television channels and cable distribution network. This business deal was split into two parts. So one part is about the print media, another part is about Next TV. So Tsai Ing-wen's share is actually mainly to do with the print media. Allegedly, he's not going to be part of Next TV's discussion. So this business deal about the print media part is under the review of the Fair Trade Commission. It is not under the review of National Communications Council because negotiation at the moment is about buying and selling of Apple Daily and Next magazine. NCC only deals with broadcasting. Fair Trade Commission is supposed to make a final decision by 27 March this year. Several policy weaknesses regarding the media and press freedom in Taiwan are highlighted because of this particular case. First, there are currently no sufficient regulations to prevent media monopoly. Second, there is a lack of a consideration of cross-media ownership among media regulators. Third, in considering press freedom, political interference is just as damaging as commercial pressure. Hence, scholars point out that the most important matter is to take a broader and more long-term view than simply trying to block Tsai Ing-wen's involvement in more media outlets in Taiwan. Therefore, two main demands are recently added to the anti-media campaign. That is, to strengthen public service broadcasting in Taiwan in order to curtail further commercialization of the media, and to strengthen the regulations of establishing labor unions in the media industry, so that the media professionals will be empowered to stand up to their bosses if and when necessary. Currently, all companies in Taiwan are supposed to establish their unions. However, there is no penalty to the company if there isn't one. So most private companies don't bother, as media industries actually mostly are privately owned. So actually there are very few labor unions within these media companies. So what's the implication to the media in Taiwan then? If we see the media liberalization of the 1980s as the first wave of democratization in Taiwan, the anti-media monopoly can be seen as a second wave of democratization, which coincides with civil society movements protesting other social issues, especially the government's handling of the economy. The first wave of media liberalization became part of the political transition in Taiwan. When martial law was lifted in 1987, the attention and resources were focused on further political and social democratization, while the media liberalization more or less ended with the commercialization of the industry. However, media commercialization does not equate to press freedom or the real liberalization of the media. The second wave of media democratization picks up where the first wave left, and hopefully will finally establish a better, fairer media infrastructure that democratic Taiwan deserves. Thank you.
And now I would like to invite our real host, Monique Chu.
I'll try to use my PowerPoint. I've seen some of my students in the audience. I hope you won't be bored by another lecture. I'll try to make it interesting. My assignment is to try to find solutions, which I think is a very difficult assignment. I'll do my best. First of all, mass media in post-martial law Taiwan has experienced accelerating market liberalization and fierce market competition. This means the tyranny of the state during the martial law era has been somewhat replaced by the tyranny of market. That means we now face the risk of market suppression. That means media owners may not check on government, which is the job that they should do in a democracy, because they support the government or want to secure a regulatory favor. Actually, before China Times was purchased by 1-1, there were loads of speculations about the owner making some fake concessions to the government demand because the newspaper was desperate to apply for more bank loans from government-related banks. In theory, according to James Curran, who's a British media scholar, media should be a check on the abuse of all kinds of powers in both the public as well as the private realms. But in reality, it is not often the case. If you look at media monopoly, I have to argue that the Chinese case is not unique. This is a summary of the case in the US. You look at the number of the corporations that control the majority of the media. By 2004, all these media outlets are really in the hand of the so-called Big Five, which led this very famous American journalist, who used to be the dean of the journalism school in Berkeley, to argue that although the Americans, in theory, depend on mainstream media for full news coverage, in reality, this